Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is Stranger Days, and the situation with Sargon and Patreon, it just keeps going. It keeps going, and now Patreon keeps doubling down. And I mean doubling down in very public ways that are easily disproven, easily called into question, and it is going to basically serve as irreparable damage to their platform, which if all they would do is come out and say, "We done goofed here, and we're sorry," they would not be in this position. And that's something like that's true here. It's extremely true here because basically they keep lying about Sargon. They do. They really do keep lying about Sargon, and they really should stop. They really should, honest to God, stop at this point. But they're not going to because they have a brand to protect, even though that brand is currently in absolute freaking free fall. I would say, given the current negative association online with Patreon, it's not going to be beneficial to people much longer, I think, especially considering the fact that they've got 100,000 creators on the platform and over 2 million people who donate every single month. So they're no small tech company, by the way. That's pretty decent numbers. But anyway, there's an article that popped up on the New York Times today, which very much acts as a defense piece for Patreon. And I picked out some parts of it that to look at without going through the whole thing, or else we would be here quite literally all afternoon. But it says here that Patreon bars anti-feminists for racist speech, inciting revolt. Again, real clickbait headline from Nellie Bowles, or Bowles, or however you want to pronounce her name. But it's not, Sargon is not just anti-feminist. He is anti-identity politics, anti-culture war, and that happens to be part of it. But even again, racist speech is up in the air to your interpretation of it. I and Tim Pool do not agree with what Sargon of Akkad has said and how he said it. He will defend it, and that's entirely fine. But him and we disagree on how he used it, but still him being deplatformed is the wrong thing. Especially when you go through the article, it talks about Sam Harris is trying to use that as a launching point, but really it's all about Sargon. It's all about Sargon. Now, it says here, this month, site moderators received a complaint about Mr. Benjamin, who has risen to fame railing against diversity and feminism during the Gamergate movement in 2014. Mr. Benjamin used the N-word and anti-gay language during an interview posted to YouTube on February 7th. Okay, so let's look at that. For one, it's a pay spin that was put together by people who hate Sargon, who have been trying to get him deplatformed everywhere. It just happened to work in this particular case. I love that they say here it's rallying against diversity and feminism, when if you know Sargon, it's not that he's against diversity, it's against like forced diversity and things along those lines. Again, it's a very nuanced debate and not one that can be easily and accurately explained with just these couple words. But hey Nelly, thanks for adding to the problem. Now, it says here that on December 6th, the company told Mr. Benjamin that it would freeze his account and that he could appeal. Mr. Benjamin objected and said the video in question should not fall on their patrons' rules because it was on YouTube, which again is his point. That's going back to a Jack Conte interview with Dave Rubin from last year, where Jack Conte says, full stop, yeah, no, we care about what happens on Patreon. And if you go and Google, or no, let's look up the N-word on Patreon, you find pages upon pages upon pages of people using the wording on there. And yet Patreon's like, that's fine, because it's very much on a per case basis here rather than a flat idea across the board. Now, for Mr. Benjamin, the timing was surprising, saying my brand has been politically incorrect for years. He said in a video titled The Patreon Witch Trials, which is true. Mr. Benjamin, who didn't respond to requests for comments, has 870,000 YouTube subscribers and more than 3,000 subscribers on Patreon, from which he'd been making around $12,000 a month. Many of his videos just show a static cartoon or a series of images with his voice speaking against movements for gender equality. Again, come on. That is such a disingenuous statement there to make. Anyway, more recently, Mr. Benjamin has moved from the fringe towards the heart of the new right. In October, he posted an hour-long interview with Steve Bannon, President Trump's former chief strategist, which was an interesting interview, I will fully admit. I don't know if I'd say Sargon's going towards the right, but I do think he does play up that particular angle. Sorry, Carl, I do. I really think you do. That's not a criticism against you and the content you make. That's just where I think that's where you've been headed. Now, it says here, Mr. Benjamin did not respond to attempts to engage him in the reform process. Now, this is where it gets interesting to me. And this is where I haven't heard Sargon talk about this himself, so I don't know his side of the story. And I will assume he will. I assume he will be responding to this. But what exactly are these attempts to engage? That's what I'm curious to know about, because based upon Jacqueline Hart, who is the person here that basically deplatformed him, and the one that had a conversation with Matt Christensen that he transcribed, that it basically said that they take everything on a case-by-case basis, it is very interesting to see what exactly transpired between the two. Now, she says here, his response to us when we told him about the reform process was to nitpick and say I was being anti-Nazi. You cannot say those words on our platform. It doesn't matter who you're directing them at. Okay, fine. I agree with that. If that was happening on your platform. It didn't happen on your platform. That is, unless somehow Jack Conte and Patreon now own YouTube, which, given how nepotistic and cronyistic Google and those companies are, it's possible. It's possible that we just don't know about that yet. But no, Conte does not own YouTube. Conte owns Patreon. That's his platform. So if Sargon posted that stream to his Patreon, then that's something I could see as being a valid argument, but it happened on Michelle Caitlin's stream. So if anything, she should be the person who would share that responsibility. And again, I'm not calling for the deplatforming of Michelle Caitlin. I have to keep reiterating that point because she's trying to play the victim. All right, stop it. Stop it. I'm bringing up a point. Anyway, she goes on to say that his removal from Patreon immediately stirred others up on the site. Saying here, Jordan Peterson says here, I think the most likely outcome, if this continues, is that all contentious speech or behavior will put the speaker or actor at risk of serious financial and social sanctions and strip them of all defense, which is inherently true. This situation is turning into that. When you find ways to radically deplatform someone in terms of finances, then yeah, that's going to make them a martyr and they're going to use that to their cause. But it goes on to say here, now, to those quitting Patreon in solidarity with Mr. Benjamin may have other motives behind the sudden outrage. This is where we get to the deflection part, which I really, really, really like. This is what Jack Conte is trying to use as like a deflection. Oh, well, he says here that as content creators using the site grow more famous and their income more significant, the 5% cut that Patreon takes of their donations may have begun to seem cumbersome. YouTube takes 30% of super chats and 55% of the ad revenue. We only get 45% of that split. And if you're with a multi-channel network, they take their cut too. So anywhere between 10 to 30%, if not more, depending on the contract that you've signed. A 5% cut is not that big of a deal. No one's going to sweat at 5%. Talent managers take 10%. Agents take 10%. No one is scoffing at 5%. Jack, what are you saying here? This is not how things are. Now, he says here, you can use a press debacle like this to drum up your community and rile people up and get them to support a cause. We welcome competition. Oh, do you there, Jack? Oh, do you there, Jackie boy? Do you really want competition? I don't think you do. I honestly do not think you want competition. I think at this point in time, you are outright trying to stop competition. I think we have seen pushes. I don't know if it's from you. but Subscribestar got lost their Patreon or lost their PayPal support. BitChute lost their PayPal support. Gab lost their PayPal support and Stripe support. BitChute, same with Stripe. These companies are kind of looking at you as kind of like the leader in regards to this particular crowdfunding side of things, and they follow your lead. So you say that you welcome competition, but you're not advocating for these companies, these payment processing companies, to work with other people. And I'm not saying you have to. That's not up to me to say. It's not up for me to force you to make that statement. But if you welcome competition, then you would welcome fair and open and reasonable competition, and therefore call upon the payment processors that you use to then also enable said competition. If you truly believe in a free market, like you say you do, I don't think you do. I just don't think it. I just don't think so. I think you're the top dog. I think that all of this is not going to impact you in the short term. Long term, however, again, irreparable damage. But it is true that he can use, and Sargon has used this to drum up his community to bolster support. And the truth of the matter is that bolstering of support has directly impacted other creators, which is an issue I have with this current situation. Because people who have done nothing wrong are being impacted. And it's a situation where there are no winners. So what you should do here is ultimately work with Sargon and reinstate him. Give him a warning. Give him a warning and stop doubling down, because your doubling down keeps getting exposed as being bullshit. Your doubling down keeps getting exposed as being nonsense. And people look at one thing you say and then juxtapose it with another thing you say and go, "Ein Minuten bitte." There's a problem here. Something's rotten in Denmark. It's not really working out. And the thing is, people like Patreon. It's the platform is good. The service is good. Why the company is choosing to act in an ideological, disingenuous way is just beyond me. And trust me, people are trying to get me deplatformed from Patreon right now. So I understand that it could happen to me at any point in time. All right, I get that. It's part of the nature of this shit. Once one person falls, the rest are going to be targeted as well. And that is just, unfortunately, the nature of the beast of this side of the internet. If you have an opinion, you can't be on Patreon. That's kind of what they're saying, isn't it? That's then that kind of what they're saying right now. Unfortunately, again, this is just the world we freaking live in. So I'm hoping that Patreon pulls her head out of their ass, Jacqueline Hart pulls her head out of her ass, and realizes that you guys keep trying to associate words said on YouTube to Patreon as being somehow connected. They're not. And anyone out there trying to use the argument, oh, well, he went under the Sargon of Akkad name over to Michelle Caitlin's stream. That's so weak arguments right there. That's just weak arguments. People have a YouTube account, they log in, they go on someone else's platform. All right. It's not the same thing. Don't even try to make it the same thing. It's bullshit. You have to actually stop. Look, I'll put it like this. Look at Tim Pool. Tim Pool does good work. All right. He does good work. And he's down like $5,200 a month as a result of this. So people are directly impacted, which is then only fueling their rage. And the people that are directly impacted, that are having these situations happen to them, they're going to use negative word of mouth to push any new creator from coming to Patreon. You've lost Sam Harris, which is a huge creator. You're losing Sword and Scale, which I believe is the 5th largest creator on the platform. The True Crime Podcast, they're leaving. Other people are scaling it down and moving away. And when you feel that, it's not going to be like a boulder on your chest. It's going to be like a death by 1,000 cuts. Own up to this shit. Fix this shit before the end of the month. And save your goddamn platform. Otherwise, you're going to ruin it. And no one is going to be very upset about that. Because all you've done is screw over people without acknowledging your own faults and your own bullshit. Anyway, that's all I really want to say about that. Your thoughts, your opinions, let me know down in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been Stranger Days. Merry Christmas. If you want to support the channel, you can always go to streamlabs.com and just do a direct donation. That'd be fantastic. I have a Patreon. You can use that as well if you want. I understand if you don't. People don't want to leave Patreon. That's another thing that creators are finding themselves between a rock and a hard place on. So I'll leave it to you. Have yourself a great day, guys. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, whatever it is you celebrate, and peace out.